Welcome to The Blitz, a podcast from Coram Deo Church. The Blitz is all about tackling tough topics head-on at full speed. Are you ready? Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of the day it is that you happen to be checking out this podcast. My name is John. I'm the lead pastor of Coram Deo Church, and I will be your host once again today on The Blitz. Today, our topic is why pastors must be men. And I gotta say, it just kind of feels silly that I have to talk through this, but we do, because somehow the church, especially in North America, has really gotten itself confused about the issue of church leadership and gender. So we're going to talk about why pastors must be men, a little bit of the cultural backdrop, why I'm talking about this now. I recently mentioned in a sermon there was a Lutheran denomination. I believe it was a church in California, but it certainly is not unique to California or even this liberal Lutheran denomination. But churches are into ordaining lesbians, and that's a thing. And many of you may know Rick Warren, lead pastor, founding pastor of Saddleback, famous author, super influential Christian, pastor, leader, dude, Big Eva. Their church, the funny thing is they're part of the SBC. Their church ordained female pastors just a couple weeks ago, and that's not cool with the SBC. And if you're following what's up with the SBC, there's all sorts of discussion and debate about gender and men and ordination and Beth Moore. And so does the Bible say anything about gender and church leadership? And so I just want to address that briefly. If you're a member at Coram Deo Church, you already know this because we go over this in our church membership class, and whether or not you may personally agree with that, the people who are members have agreed to submit to it. And so I'm going to just kind of talk us through why it is that pastors must be men. Anytime this conversation comes up, the debate always goes to 1 Timothy chapter 2 and chapter 3. So in chapter 2, verse 12, it says, I do not permit a woman to teach or exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain quiet. And then it says, for Adam was formed first and then Eve. And then in chapter 3, Paul starts talking about the qualifications of an elder. An elder oversees the church. In Acts, we see that elders pastor the church. That's what Paul charges them to do. It says, the saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to the office of overseer, he desires a noble task. Therefore, an overseer, that is an elder, must be above reproach, the husband of one wife. So here you have kind of this 1-2 punch. As Paul's laying out the qualifications for elders who pastor the church, he is to be a husband of one wife. Clearly, he's talking about a guy there, a dude who is married to one wife. And then just before that, in chapter 2, he talks about, he draws a line that women are not to teach. And this is understood to mean teach in an authoritative way, teaching from the office of elder. That was what we would consider preaching. And so that is excluded. Women are excluded from that office. And most of the men are as well. It is only biblically qualified males who are to function in that capacity. And of course, there are people are going to say, well, Paul is just kind of dealing with the cultural norms and assumptions of his day. He doesn't want to unsettle that. He's trying to honor these traditions. I don't know how you read the book of Acts and see Paul getting beat up and thrown outside the city and then conclude that Paul really doesn't want to upset cultural norms. Clearly, Paul doesn't have a problem with that. But furthermore, when Paul is laying down this distinction and drawing a line with the authoritative preaching, teaching in the church and eldership, he actually tells us why he's drawing this line. And it has absolutely nothing to do with culture, and it has everything to do with creation. He says, for Adam was formed first and then Eve. Why is it that the office of elder is open only to biblically qualified men in the church? The answer is because Adam was formed first and then Eve. And apparently in Paul's theology, and as you'll see in the entire story of the scriptures, this is incredibly important. This is not a culturally conditioned command. This command, this principle, goes all the way back to the creation of the earth, the heavens of the earth, and the creation of Adam. Okay? So it is very clear in Genesis, God made Adam and Eve, male and female, in his image. We are not discussing whether Adam or Eve has more value or more dignity or more of the image of God or any of that. That is not up for debate. Adam and Eve, men and women, all people bear the image of God, regardless, period. End of statement. Yes, this is not about value and dignity. This is about unique roles that are assigned, okay? So God made Adam first, and it was out of Adam's side that God made Eve. Now, one would think that, is that inconsequential? Could God have just done it the other way? But God did not do it the other way. He made Adam first. And you'll see that God came to Adam in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 15, that God gave Adam a particular responsibility before Eve was even on the scene. Okay, so Adam is created. We see him, in chapter 2, realizing it's not good for him to be alone. He comes to that conclusion by himself. But while he is alone, God does give him a command, and that is the command of protecting, right, and cultivating the garden. And then Adam realizes this is not a task that he can do by himself. And so God is going to create for Adam a gifted helper who is uniquely created to complement Adam, to work alongside of Adam in this mission that God has given them. But Adam bears a unique responsibility. God tells Adam what he's supposed to do. God creates Eve. They are, Adam says, bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. And Adam then gives these instructions to Eve, who comes alongside of him to help him in this mission. But Adam bears a unique responsibility. This is true biologically. We just know that men, because of the way we're made with testosterone, that our muscles are different, our heart's capacity to pump blood and our ability to absorb oxygen, all that stuff is unique. Men seem to have made for a protecting a role that requires a physical strength that women do not naturally, generally speaking, do not possess. Peter talks about the woman being the weaker vessel, that is not of lesser honor or dignity or value, but he's just talking about the biological reality that men are stronger. Men are created for something different. But part of that is not just physical protection and work, but there's also this issue of headship. Romans tells us, looking back at the fall in Genesis, that we were in Adam, that Adam served and related to humanity in a way that Eve did not. Adam was our federal or our covenantal representative head. And so everybody flows from Adam. Everybody is in Adam. He is responsible for all of us. It does not say that Eve is responsible for all of mankind or that all of us are in Eve, though all of us have descended from Eve, but rather he says that we are in Adam. So Adam occupies this unique role as the male. He is a federal head who represents all of humanity. And when Paul is writing to Timothy about leadership in the church, he's like, hey, that principle of headship that was present in the garden, that also applies in the church. Men take a unique responsibility. Part of what Paul is thinking is that every church is kind of this imperfect Edenic situation in which there is work to be done. There's protecting that needs to take place. There's cultivating that needs to take place. This happens together, men and women together, complementing each other with their unique gifts and abilities. And yet there is a unique responsibility that is laid upon Adam. There is unique responsibility that is laid upon the elders, who must be men. Okay. Now this theme follows itself all the way through the scriptures. In Exodus chapter 4, verse 5, it says that they may believe that the Lord, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob has appeared to you. You notice that when Moses is talking about the redemptive history and God's work and the patriarchy, he doesn't say we worship the God of Sarah, Rebecca, and Rachel and Leah. Now, that would be true, but it's not what he says. He talks about the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, right? So there is, again, this headship, this male responsibility that we see repeated over and over again. Adam clearly was responsible for the creation, and he blew it. And God said he's going to deal with that issue of sin and death. There's going to be one to come, an offspring. That story is followed through the lives of the patriarchs, men who bear a unique responsibility and role in this world and God's mission. And so we follow that story through the God of Abraham, of Isaac, the God of Jacob, and then we get to the New Testament, and we have the most compelling, the clearest revelation of the character of God. We have God showing up in the flesh. We have the Messiah who was promised showing up. We have the second Adam, the Adam who is going to be our covenantal head, represent us, and yet will not fall in the garden like the first Adam did. And when that Messiah shows up, when that representative shows up, it's not a female. Jesus was not a girl. And there's a reason for that. You go, well, couldn't he just have as easily been born a female? It's like, no, Jesus was born a male. Why? Because he's the second Adam. He bears a unique responsibility as the Son of God and the Son of Man. He is the new Adam. And just like the first Adam, he is going to bear a unique responsibility. And just like the first Adam, his actions will be imputed to all who are in him. In the first Adam, we are dead in sin. In the second Adam, we are made alive to righteousness. So when God shows up to reveal who he is, and when he comes to undo the mess that was made by Adam, God, the Son, the second person of the Trinity, takes to himself a male body. He is a male, a man, okay? Now, there is a retelling of the story of Israel in the life of Christ. Christ is the fulfillment of all that Israel was to be and to do. They had failed at their vocational mission, and Christ comes to fulfill all of that. And in fulfilling that, he kind of reconstitutes Israel, not around the 12 tribes, but around 12 disciples, right? And that number 12 is really, really important. Jesus went up to the mountain, he prayed, he came down, and he appointed 12. And that's a sign to us that God's redemptive story is no longer going to be following the story of the 12 tribes. It's going to be following these disciples. And we see that in the book of Acts so clearly. So you have the lens, kind of it's shifting, panning, and focusing. Now God is, through his Son, reconstituting what Israel is. And when God, when Christ picks these disciples, they are all men. Now, people will be quick to say, but weren't there women that were supporting his ministry and contributing to his ministry? Of course. The question is not, are women participating in ministry? Do they contribute in incredible, wonderful, valuable ways? That's not the question at all. The question is the office of elder is that open to anybody, or is it biblically qualified men and males? And it is clear that the role of women in Jesus' ministry is not the same as the role of the men, especially when you get to the book of Acts, where you have Peter and John preaching and teaching, and Stephen teaching and being stoned, and Paul and Barnabas and the missionary adventures that are going on. These are all being carried out by men. That's not just a pragmatic thing because they were available. There is a rich history of theology behind that. God is doing something new, unique, and he's doing it through these men. And of course, women play an a vital role in that, but not the same role. Okay, so when you get to books like Timothy and Titus, and you have the Apostle Paul now establishing the practice for these New Testament local churches, right? In the backdrop is God made Adam first. God gave Adam a unique responsibility. Adam was our representative head. God traces the story through Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We had the 12 tribes of Israel. We know the stories of Moses and David. When God comes in flesh, he comes as a male. When Jesus is reorganizing his people, he chooses 12 male disciples. When the mission goes out in Acts, the people leading that are biblically qualified men. And then when Paul is writing to Timothy about the requirement of elders to be appointed in the local church, in both 1 Timothy chapter 3 and in Titus chapter 1, they both say the same thing: a husband of one wife, right? And as a husband of one wife. So it is clear from Genesis all the way to the end that God makes all people in his image. Men and women bear that image. They both have equality when it comes to value and honor and dignity as by virtue of being image bearers, but God calls men and women to different roles in the church. That was true in Genesis, in the creation in Eden. Before there was sin, you had unique roles. It's true throughout the history of Israel. It's true in the incarnation of the Son of God. It's true in the reforming of the 12 disciples. And it's true in the letters that Paul writes to Timothy and Titus as they are establishing eldership in local churches. You just cannot escape this reality, okay? So why must pastors be men? Because God has placed upon men a unique responsibility to lead and to serve, and a unique responsibility to bear a weight, whether that is in the home or that is in the church. It's a unique role. We can also say clearly, unapologetically, that it's not good for men to be alone, that there are weaknesses that we have, and God's wisdom and gift to men and to the church is also women, right? This position is called complementarianism because we believe that men and women are different, but God in his wisdom has made them to complement one another. And so we have the dignity and value of men and women protected and grounded in the Imago Dei made by God, but we also understand there are different roles that God assigns to men and women. We can also see, while protecting the unity of God, because God is one, but even in the Godhead, there are different roles. It's clear in the work of salvation. The Father elects and sends the Son. The Son is the one who goes, takes flesh to himself, suffers, and dies in our place, being the Lamb of God, is raised on the third day, and then ascends back to heaven and is seated on the throne. And it's the Son who sends the Spirit into the world to convict the world and to regenerate the elect and to empower them unto obedience. They're not all doing the same things, and we don't conclude that one is more valuable than the other. We affirm the beauty of the Trinity, the intrinsic value of each member of the Trinity, while also acknowledging that there are different roles. That's the same thing when it comes to humanity. We acknowledge the beauty, the value, the dignity, the worth of men and women made in the image of God, and we also acknowledge that God made men and women for different things. And within the church, the role of pastor and elder is set aside exclusively for biblically qualified men. Not all men are qualified to be elders. Sometimes we forget that. We think, oh, this is a men and women. No, it's a biblically qualified men serve in that capacity in the local church. And as Paul talks to the church in Acts, the elders pastor and shepherd the flock. This is also what Peter says in 1 Peter chapter 5. The elders pastor the flock. So why must pastors be men? Because that is the clear model demonstrated over and over and over again throughout the scriptures from beginning to end. All right, I hope that was helpful for you. Thanks for joining me today on the Blitz. Until next time, take care.